Over the summer, my boyfriend and I made a plan to go on a road trip to Scotland, to wild camp, hike, and hopefully dip our toes in some of Scotland's most beautiful lochs. After months of planning and many, many hours in the car, we finally arrived at our first destination at Loch Ard. We got to our tent really late last night, which is why I didn't film any of it, but it got really dark. We left at 4 AM and we got to our tent and set it up by 10 PM. It was a long day yesterday.
Describing physical exercise that he wasn't doing. Judd was walking. Not much farther now. You bearing up, Lewis? My God, Lewis thought. The man's well past 80, but I don't think.
So BMW UK lent us an i3 to drive all the way to Scotland. This is an electric car with a range of up to 188 miles. So we wanted to test its limits and see how far we could really go. Oh, look at this charge point. It is wild. We just had the most luxurious charge point ever at this incredible hotel in the middle of absolutely nowhere. We've only got 4% left, and then we will be heading to charge point number 3 in Cumbria. And that's the last one in England before we head over to Scotland. Okay, so we're at our last charge point. It's getting quite late. Bit worried that we're not going to make it to our campsite before it gets dark. Having arrived in the dark, it was pretty magical to wake up to these views. The stillness of the loch took our breath away, and the beauty of the woodland stole our hearts. To be in the presence of such wild beauty was humbling. To look out and watch the ducklings floating across the water, chatting to one another, felt like we were spying on nature in the most tender moments. As we packed up our tent and left no trace of us ever being there, we were sad to be leaving so soon, but excited to drive north. The walk back to the car was only about 5 kilometers, and it was a pretty easy walk. It was also pretty special being able to see it in the light, having arrived in the dark. It started to rain quite lightly, but it wasn't too bad. As we approached the car though, it started to really pour, and we were grateful to be moving on. Our journey would take us through Glencoe into the Scottish Highlands, one of the most awe-inspiring landscapes I'd ever seen. It was a true privilege to witness such wild country and drive through roads surrounded by mountains. Ben Nevis is a pretty spectacular beauty. We had planned to hike up about halfway so that we could find this lock that we'd seen to camp by. Unfortunately, the further we climbed, the steeper it got and the heavier our backpacks felt. And after several days of already being out camping, it was a pretty grueling climb. The sun also began to set, so we thought the safer option was to cut our losses and head down the mountain to Glen Nevis. As we climbed down the mountain, we came across River Nevis and we followed it along to find one of the most beautiful spots I think we had. Down in the glen, you could see Ben Nevis towering above us while we made our dinner and set up our tent. The river provided a really lovely and calming sound to fall asleep to. And then in the morning, we moved on. Good morning guys, we've just finished camping at Glen Nevis. Ben Nevis is just over there. We climbed out some of it yesterday, I think you saw, but because it was getting quite late and we were worried that we wouldn't find a pitch, we ended up coming down and camping by River Nevis. And we've just finished breakfast and we're going to head off to Fort William to charge the car, and then we're going hopefully out west, but hopefully we will next see you in Ullapool, I think that's how you say it, or Gairloch. As we packed up our tent and headed back to the car park, we realised that today was going to be a beautiful day. The sun was shining and rarely in Scotland there was no rain and no clouds. So we headed off to a place called Roybridge where we could charge the car, and we had a look at our book Wild just to see where we wanted to head next. And instead of heading all the way out west, we decided to stay close by. And we headed into Glenroy, and boy was this a wonderful decision. One of the best things about driving an electric car is it really forces you to slow down, because every time you use some charge you have to think about where you want that to take you and how long you want it to last. And we decided, do you know what, Glenroy sounds like a beautiful place. So we headed in, and oh, I'm so glad that we did. After a quick dinner, we packed up and headed across the bridge to find a spot to camp for the night. This was just the most beautiful evening. I can't even believe watching the sunset over this glen was just unbelievable. We didn't film much this evening because we just wanted to enjoy what we could see, and it truly was one of the nights that we remember the most.